Hello, everybody. We are live, and I am so excited. Hey, AJ Locashio here, founder and executive director at Umbrella US, baby. And I am here today introducing y'all to Genie V, who is our fabulous rock star of a host for, I'm not kidding, fabulous rock star of a host for ND and NO. Hi, Jeannie.
Hi.
I'm so glad you're here.
I'm glad to be here. I am excited about this, but anytime that I get to do anything with you, I am super excited.
That's true. That's true. Hi, Legacy. So glad to have you here. And I agree. All of those exclamation points after Jeannie. So yes, I'm always happy to do something with you as well. Except for those days that I can't people. And, on those days I just can't people. So let me say this. People might be like, hey, why doesn't it look nice and you have lights and stuff on? I'm here to normalize not turning the lights on, even if you're doing a podcast or something where everybody says that you have to have this light shining in your face because it makes it all lovely. Legacy. I don't want to have lights shining in my face today. It is very dysregulating to me. So I did not turn my lamp on and I don't have that. And maybe it doesn't look as nice, but that is okay. Before we move further, I know that there might be somebody who is listening, and I would like to give a visual description really quickly. So AJ Locashio, I am a white person with blue and black glasses. I have black and gray, medium length curly hair shaved on one side. I have a collar necklace around my neck, an owl tattoo on my chest, a cowl neck gray tank, and a black with rainbow stripes on the sleeves cardigan. Jeannie, can you give me a visual description of your lovely self, please?
Absolutely. I am Genie V, and I am a early middle age transgender woman with auburn red hair and glasses in a beige off-white striped top with a cowl neck, and I am wearing my bone necklace that pays tribute to my 3 fur babies that I have here. I am sitting in my workspace, and I am surrounded by things such as my love of role-playing games, Dungeons and Dragons, Coyote and Crow. I also have my comic book of Spider-Man and Moon Knight and my guitar. So this is my space that I work in.
Awesome. I did not describe my background. My background is some cubes back there with my some books and things sitting on it, and I have a large green plant behind me and a picture of bright watercolor drawn faces. Thank you for that reminder.
And Alfredo.
Oh, yes, and of course, laying on the floor, and he may pop his head up every once in a while to look out the window. My dog, Alfredo, who is a husky mix, and he is lovely and sweet.
Yes, he is.
He's very sweet. Okay, let's get going. Okay, who is Genie V anyway?
Well, Genie V is sort of a brand name. My name is Genevieve Bergman, and Genie V is the brand that I use to sort of capture my sassy, brassy, nerdy ass, sex positive, former Christian pastor self in the work that I do in helping others become better versions of themselves. Genie V is me in sort of, I guess to say, my emerged self. The idea of being who I was. My former life, I was a United Methodist pastor. I was married. I had 2 kids. I was just as straight laced as you could imagine, thinking that I was a cisgender man, heterosexual, monogamous, and dull as fuck. Come to find out, Genie V, me, is a binary transgender woman who is polyamorous and ethically non-monogamous. I am sex positive, kink positive. I am nerdy as hell and will be forever. But this is, Genie V is this amazing person that I came to know when I was 49 years old. I'd lived for 49 years and didn't know I existed. And I met other people's expectations of who I was supposed to be according to their definitions. And one day I stopped and realized I'm not happy. I'm not happy fulfilling other people's expectations. I'm not happy being what other people want me to be. And so I began this journey of discovery and finding, who am I? And all of a sudden, it was like, oh, there are layers here. And whenever I talk about layers, I automatically go back to Shrek. It's like, I'm a parfait. I'm not an onion. I'm a parfait. Because the deeper you go, the sweeter it is. But
with the little chili spice added in.
Definitely, I like a little chocolate and chili put together.
Yeah.
But all of these layers were sort of just revealed as I began to look at my life and examine the things that were important to me, the things that were authentic to me. There was a reason why I was drawn to wearing women's clothes. Men's clothes it just never fit. I never felt good wearing those unless it was a t-shirt of something very nerdy and geeky. But the moment I stopped and I said, why do I like wearing these clothes? Here I am in this body contoured conforming top that shows off, a chest that I'm kind of proud of. Why am I more comfortable like this? Why am I more comfortable in a wig with makeup on? And it was like, oh, hell, this is what we call transgender right now in this time period. And all of a sudden I realized I'm a transgender woman, and this is who I am. This is who I'm comfortable being. And then I started exploring people that I was attracted to. I was attracted to my wife, but also, have you all ever seen Matt Bomer? Holy hell. The first time I saw Matt Bomer on White Collar, I suddenly knew I was not straight anymore. And then I just began to grow out from that experience of, yes, I did love my wife, but I knew she couldn't meet my needs completely. And that there were other people who, if I had them as a part of my life in a very intimate way, could be a part of that. And so I start peeling all of these layers of authenticity off, and thus emerged Genie V.
Genie V, the self-advocate.
Yes, the advocate. I fight for who I am, and I try to convince others to fight for who they are.
And because that I'm not gonna, I'm gonna have to say it. Self-advocacy, like self-love, no, not self-love. Self-advocacy, like self-care, like anything else, is bullshit.
Yeah.
And what the hell, like, this whole thing is about self-advocacy, right? This NDNNO is for self-advocates, but in a different way than capitalism would like to define what self-advocacy means.
Right.
You didn't do this completely alone.
No.
You learned that the only way to survive and indeed thrive in this
Mhm.
life is through community.
Absolutely. Now, to be fair, I had community prior to what people, so I think people kind of, they use this term, but they don't really use it in a way that is all encompassing. But before coming out in all of my authentic layers, I had community. I was a part of the United Methodist Church. I'd been a part of the United Methodist Church since I was 7 years old. I had spent over 40 years as a United Methodist. But what I discovered in all of that time was that community was very guarded. It was very isolating. It was not what community was about. When I came out in my authenticity and I began to find people who were authentic, I suddenly realized this is what community is.
Mm-hmm.
I have found more community among the nerds and um, among the transgender community, among the ethically non-monogamous, the kink community. Hell, I have found more authentic community with sex workers than
Mm-hmm.
I ever found within the United Methodist Church.
Right.
And being a part of every one of those groups, even though I may not have been exactly like any of them, they embraced me completely as a part of who they were. And I found my place as a part of that group. And I was able to explore who I was more in depth and find sort of the 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 boundary lands
Yeah.
of who I was. And being able to say, okay, I'm up to here, but I'm not out to there. So
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. And they were willing to accept me that way.
Yep. Yeah. And something that you found was kind of a commonality against many, um, did I say against? A
Yeah.
commonality with many of these individuals in these various accepting groups were neurodivergencies.
Yes.
And you started really being able to identify your own neurodivergencies.
Right.
So tell us about that. What are they? What are your neurodivergencies? Um,
So
and are they discovered or diagnosed or a
right.
combination of both?
Okay. So one of the communities that I connected with was a community of sex positive educators and coaches. And I connected with the group through an organization that trained sex coaches. I am a certified clinical sexologist, and I found connection with some of these people, but one person in particular sort of emerged out of that group. And as I got to know you, Angela,
Yeah. Board
you,
certified clinical sexologist here too.
there you go. As I got to know you, I began to understand something that I affectionately termed my frittata. And my frittata was a reference to a period in my life where I had experienced an immense amount of trauma and mental and emotional disruption.
Mm,
And as I began to work with you, I began to understand that what I was experiencing was this very undefined category of experiences called neurodiversity. And as you and I talked, I began to look back through my life and realize, okay, some of these more sedated forms were present
mhm.
throughout my entire life. And then all of a sudden, in this period of turmoil, everything just launched to the forefront. And the way that I describe my neurodiversities is the intersection of my neurodiversities looks like something that you would get at an all you can eat IHOP. It looks like a stack of pancakes just piled on top of each other with a lot of butter in between and a lot of syrup on top. Um, Very easily, I think being a nerd to the level that I am a nerd is a form of neurodiversity. It was the
Mm,
earliest one. Uh, you know, my attraction to comic books and fantasy and video games and action figures, you know, people would give me a lot of shit being
Yeah.
16 and 17 years old collecting action figures and playing with them.
Right.
Oh my God, playing with toys as a teenager. Shouldn't you be out abusing women at that age? But I found it was more fun to play with action figures and create stories. So that was one of the very first neurodiversities that I clung to.
Right.
Then also, I began to experience cross-dressing in my teens. And it wasn't until, you know, I began the process of working out who I was that I realized being a cross-dressing person, realizing that I'm a transgender woman, that is a neurodiversity. People
Mm-hmm.
don't connect with themselves or feel a disconnect with themselves, I should say, the way that I experience myself
Right.
in mass. There's something different about how I look at myself as
Right.
a woman in terms of the image that I hold in myself, but outwardly appearing as a man. And
Yeah.
so beginning to experience being transgender as neurodiverse,
Yeah.
working with therapists, I began to realize that my PTSD, which was diagnosed, was also a manifestation of complex PTSD, which
Mm-hmm.
has been danced around. Also, I have traits consistent with
Let's
a,
just say that it's been danced around because of a lack of understanding by some professionals that,
yeah,
I mean, you just brought up some things that I'm sorry. Legacy says, I love seeing the stimming and rocking, Angela. I did not even realize I was doing that. Yes, that's me. I am who I am right here. But anyway, back to the CPTSD. You are a teenager
hmm
being made fun of, being ostracized from the community, um, being being told that you are less than, you are cross-dressing, and the messages that are coming through in the media and from community. And from people who you love and care for, even though they may not know that that was happening,
yeah,
just the messaging that is coming in is telling you that you are wrong and you are less than. And that is where that complex PTSD comes from, because you're being made to feel unsafe within the
mhm,
community which you're in, within the environment that you're in. And we know that complex PTSD is a neurodivergency. And because of that, um, we can ask the question, so being queer,
mhm,
is it possible to be queer without having a form of neurodivergency? Not the not the queerness or the
right,
gender identity necessarily making you neurodivergent, but the trauma that comes along with that identity causing
right.
changes in your brain so that you can interact with the society that you're in and continue to survive.
Yeah. And I don't, so I don't look at, for when I talk about my sexuality, when I talk about my attractions, when I talk about arousal, when I talk about my manifestation of who I am as a sexual being, I don't use neurodiverse to talk about the why. I
Mm,
talk about it as a reaction to neurotypical standards,
right.
in that we are told time and time again, and it's getting louder and louder again because we're in a cycle of heteronormative, cisnormative, neuronormative
Yep.
language, that if you are straight and you are monogamous and um, you are vanilla, then you are normal and everybody else is deviant. So I talk about neurodiversity as an aspect of my sexuality, my
Mm-hmm.
sexual beinghood, to say I am different than that. I
Yep.
acknowledge it. I don't want to be that. Neither will you allow me to be that. So I use neurodiversity and I use my neurodivergent sexuality as a manifestation of rebellion
Right.
against this narrative that somebody has to be normal. And I'm like, fuck you. I am who I am. I'm normal to me. I'm different than you, but I'm normal to me. You know,
Right.
I I I don't have a problem if I'm attracted to cisgender men, cisgender women, transgender women, non-binary people, gender fluid people. I don't have a problem being attracted to somebody who's in their 20s, nor do I have a problem being attracted to somebody who's in their 70s. But society will try to tell me, well, you are just a deviant. There's something wrong with you. And I'm like, no, I am diverse. I'm different. And so that's where I use neurodiversity in terms of my sexuality. I don't think it is a reason why. I think it is a stand against.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, in terms of my neurology, yeah, I'm a transgender woman because I believe my neurology is wired differently.
Yep.
And from my conception, there was a difference in how I was developed over time. And so nature and nurture contributed to the differences of my wiring in my neurology.
Yeah.
And so that, in my opinion, is a why statement. But as far as, my attractions or anything else like that, no, my queerness is just the fact that I am who I am. And if people don't like it, that's their own problem.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, being nerd was the first thing that I accepted boldly. Being a nerd was the first thing that I owned. 70% of my wardrobe when I was the other guy was nerd t-shirts, comic book and movie references. That's
Only then.
what
You still have a lot of nerd shirts,
I have a lot, but it's not
but
70%
not
of my
70%.
wardrobe.
Okay, fair enough. Fair
Trust
enough.
me, there's a hell of a lot more frilly and lace and all of those things than there are nerdy t-shirts. I still have those t-shirts, which tells you just how big my wardrobe is because I am a
Okay.
fucking clothes horse.
Okay. Fair enough.
I was on Torrid just before I went live looking at some new clothes and some new shoes. So
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. I love that. So you have a parfait or a frittata, like you said, full of different ways. Um, not only neurodivergencies, but also intersections,
yes.
right? So you have this, this variety
So
of
real quick,
intersections.
for some people do not know what a frittata is, and therefore the reference may escape them. So a frittata in its most basic form is a pan of scrambled eggs with stuff inside of it mixed up and fried. Okay? So my brain from 2016 until 2021 was just trauma upon trauma upon trauma. And when I emerged from all of that in 2021, this right up here was a bunch of scrambled eggs that had a bunch of stuff mixed in and it was fried.
Mm,
And I have been on the road to trying to create a new set of structures to be able to deal with the frittata,
yeah.
this scrambling of my neural pathways because of trauma, because of transition, because of life change that I've never encountered before. Right now in my life, I'm experiencing what it means to be a woman outwardly in society. I am experiencing what it means to be homeless. I'm experiencing what it means to be disabled. I'm experiencing what it means to be the target of a genocide. All of that coming together right now as a 52-year-old human being.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you about things that you have encountered or overcome, and you haven't overcome everything yet. But
No.
I'm going to stop us for just a second because we touched on something, and I actually want to put this up and share this with everybody because you kind of touched on something that is controversial in our community, and that is, what does it mean to be neurodivergent?
Yeah.
And so I want to share. I want to share something that the person who created, who coined the term neurodivergent, I want to share what they said.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna throw this in here really quickly. And don't you hate it when you have everything ready and then it just goes away?
Yeah, I call it life.
Like it happens, right? Okay, here we go. I'm going to put this up. So this is a quote by Cassian Asasumasu. And this is what Cassian said on a Tumblr comment, because they take this off because it's blocking it. You know, people were talking about neurodivergence. And so Cassian, Neurodivergent K, came on and said, hey, y'all, I'm the one who coined this term. Let me tell you what it really means. And you hit on that when you were talking about this today. So Cassian said, I am multiply neurodivergent. I'm autistic, epileptic, have PTSD, have cluster headaches, have a Chiari malformation. Neurodivergent just means a brain that diverges. Autistic people, ADHD people, people with learning disabilities, epileptic people, people with mental illnesses, people with MS or Parkinson's or apraxia or cerebral palsy or dyspraxia, or no specific diagnosis, but wonky lateralization or something. That is all it means, a brain that diverges. Yeah. So I wanted to bring that up because that is what, when we on ND and NO are talking about this, and we're talking about self-advocacy, we may use terms like condition. We may talk about the brain and the neural pathways and those sorts of things. And that doesn't mean that we're subscribing at all to a medical model.
No.
And when we talk about it as an identity, it doesn't mean that we are subscribing to a social model. True to who you are, who I am, and who Umbrella US is, we take a non-binary approach to defining neurodivergence.
Exactly.
And I'm going to say thank you to Jessica Johns, our co-founder, who actually said that this week in one of our info sessions, when people were kind of asking questions on how do you do that? You know, why can't you take a stance, blah, blah, blah. And I said, Jessica typed in there, non-binary is a stance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yes, and you perfectly just touched on that, talking about that, you know, your sexuality, every piece of you, all of those intersections of who you are, along with conditions and things that you have diagnosed and things that you've discovered but maybe haven't diagnosed, actually all play a part in who Genie V is as a neurodivergent individual.
Right. Absolutely. So this is where I come down to. I have a lot of people who respond to me with the common refrain, facts over feelings. And my immediate response is this: feelings are facts. When we talk about feeling something, we are talking about the neural responses to stimuli. Emotions are a biological reaction to our environment and the conditions that we experience, just like if I'm experiencing it being cold, I don't say it is cold to me. I say I feel cold, because a feeling is a fact. And the reality is that when there is a disruption of the neurological system, if you are in a place where it is 125 degrees and you feel cold, there is something that needs to be reconciled, because there is an experience where your feeling is a fact that needs to be accounted for in context of where you are.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we call that heat stroke. If you feel cold when it is 125 degrees, there is something that needs to be dealt with, that needs to be addressed, and that is a fact. Your feeling is an indication of that fact. My feeling that I am a transgender woman is a fact, because my neurology, between the identity portion of my brain and the senses of what I perceive about myself, there is an incongruence there.
Mm-hmm.
The way to deal with that incongruence is not to fix a static portion of the brain, because in order to do that, you have to traumatize the brain and
Mm-hmm.
make that identity portion of the brain work differently. Instead, the way to deal with that is to change the perception of oneself, so that you are seeing yourself as your identity portion of your brain has identified you. The idea of being a transgender person is that the incongruence is best served by allowing the person to live as who they are in their brain.
Yes. Yes.
And that is what I work with. We have an image of ourselves. We have an identity that is wired into, it's above the animal brain, but it's below the conscious brain.
Mm-hmm.
It's somewhere wedged in between, and we don't know where it is, perfectly yet. But
Right.
it's not that sense of fight or flight or freeze or fuck. It's not that portion of the brain. And
Right.
it's not that portion of the brain that says, oh yeah, I'm going to deal with this rationally. There is nothing rational about being a transgender woman in the United States in the 21st century. There's nothing rational about that. There's nothing rational about the fact that I came out in the very same year that the first anti-trans medical ban was passed in the States.
Right.
There's nothing rational about that. And my desire to live my life has brought me back to one of the worst states for transgender people to live in, Oklahoma. There's nothing rational about that. But my need to be who I am overrides what other people would think to be rational, because our identity rests somewhere between the animal brain and the conscious brain. And that is where I work. I
Yeah.
work with people in that part of their brain, and I say, you have a right to be who you are in that, and you have a right to fight for who you are. And
Yeah.
that's why NDNO is such a huge thing for me, because it allows me to talk with people, to equip others, to say, you say that others don't want you to be this, but we want to let you know you can be this. You can be who you are. This part of your brain is valid. Who you are is valid, and we want you to live that way. We want you to be who you are, because you are stronger when you're living that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you talked about the, I'm going to try really hard here, y'all, to not get into my truly special interest and go overboard in educating about the nervous system and all of that. But what you said is it is better for you to sit within who you really are, to be within your authenticity, to take the mask off, if you
Yeah.
will, and to be around people where you don't have to put that mask on unless you want to and you choose
Right.
to.
Yeah.
And that's because if we are not in that space, when we are not in that space that's in the middle that we may not be fully consciously aware of, when we are not in that space where we want to be, then our sympathetic nervous system kicks in and we are in that fight, flight, freeze, fawn mode.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
And when you are in that mode constantly 24/7, that's not sustainable.
No.
And eventually it will kill you.
Yes.
Because that mode is the being chased by a tiger mode.
Mm-hmm.
And as much fun as that might sound for some people, you can only sustain staying alive when a tiger wants to eat you for so long. And so the dangers that are in our environment today are different than the dangers that were in our environment years and years and years ago when our brain first came to be and began its evolution, which takes a really long ass time. I know that there are some people who might hear that who are going to say, no, it doesn't. Okay, yes, I agree that there are certain things that happen very quickly. Not arguing that at all. But for full 100% turn everything around, that takes a long time, and we're still very much that brain from early on, and it responds in the same way to stressors in your environment that make you feel unsafe as it would to you being chased by a wild animal.
Yeah.
And again, that's not sustainable. However, being able to be our authentic selves, knowing and feeling comfortable that we have access to the resources that we need and that we can ask for those resources. This is what we call self-advocacy. Two things there, right? Knowing that we have them. And knowing that and being able to ask for them. We need those two things there, which means we have to have community support. We can't do it all by ourselves, even though it's called self-advocacy. That is when our parasympathetic nervous system comes in and says, hey, you're safe. It's okay. Hey, guess what, y'all? That is sustainable.
Yeah.
That is sustainable, and that's where we want to be. So what I'm hearing you say is you are doing ND and NO because you want people to be able to move from the 24/7 fight, flight, freeze, fawn space into the activating the parasympathetic nervous system so that they can survive sustainably.
So that's part of it. Because there is the other part that is in the conscious brain saying, I have to meet other people's expectations of who they believe me to be. Yes, I want people to get out of the lizard brain. I want people to get out of that base emotional reaction to stress, because it is unsustainable. It is not a life. And the reason why I'm very passionate about that is because I have lived there. The entire month of September and a huge chunk of the month of August, I lived in a panic state for about 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And that is unsustainable as a life. But the other form of unsustainable life that we experience, especially in the United States and other westernized cultures, is the fulfilling of the expectations that others have on how we should behave. That is also an unsustainable life, because as long as we continue to fulfill others' expectations and we fit into the roles that others write for us, we never thrive. We are only able to fill a role, and there is a limit to filling a role, just like there is a limit to filling my cup. Once I reach the edge of this cup, I'm no longer getting anything. It's spilling out.
Mm-hmm.
When people set an expectation for us, there is a very strict, defined set of limitations.
Yep.
And as long as we are trying to fill other people's role for our life, we will never exceed those limitations.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just getting people out of fight or flight or freeze or fuck. It is also breaking out of the shackles that other people want to put on us. I want to see
Yes.
people
Yes,
thrive
yes,
into
yes.
their authenticity. I want to see people thrive into their identity. The work that I do, Genie V Productions, is first and foremost about people living into their identity, not the identity that other people want to put upon them. I want
Yes.
people to be real. I want people to live who they are. And there's a lot of people who come up to me, you know, throughout my history as a pastor, they would come up to me and they would say, well, this is who I am, and you're just going to have to accept me or not. And I look at it now going back and I'm like, that's not who you are.
Yeah.
That's who you had to become in order to deal with other people's expectations.
Right.
You had to get to a place where when you exceeded their expectations, you had to fight. That's not who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about who you really are. Let's talk about who really defines yourself. What is your real image? Because this tough, I'm going to say whatever the hell I want to kind of attitude, that's bluster.
Right.
That
It's
is
a
just a
mask.
persona.
It's a mask that's been put there to protect them from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like,
I would say even it's been a mask that put on there. That was one of my masks.
yeah.
In the past, that has definitely been one of my masks.
Right.
100%, because it
Now,
had to be.
just like with TikTok. Okay, so for TikTok, which is where I do a lot of my promotional stuff, I get a lot of trolls. I get a lot of people who come in and they are trans antagonistic and they want to invalidate my experience and my truth. That's fine. They can do that. 80% of the time, I ignore it. But part of my authentic self, and Angela, you and I have talked about this a lot, part of my authentic self is being sassy and brassy. And there are times when I just got to say something because, well, they give me a comment. And this is how I respond, you know, to you know, this is how I respond to anything. If you feed me a line that is perfect setup, I'm going to spike that volleyball right back down on the other side because that's what I like to do. You know, somebody made the comment, Jesus saves. I'm like, no, Jesus doesn't have a savings account. He doesn't save any money. He gives all of it away. You know, that's just right off the top of my head. It's what I do. People come in and they make comments. And there are some times when I just let it go.
Right.
And I just free form what people say, I respond to because it's something I need to do. It's part of who I am. Yeah. And sometimes I sit there and I say, you know, I'm really sorry that you want to invalidate me, in the sense that it really sucks to need to have a dopamine hit by treating somebody so badly that you are addicted to your own horrible negative nature.
Right.
And that's authentic to me too.
Right. Right. Because nobody would choose to be that way. Nobody would choose that because it flat out doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Okay. So we know why ND and NO.
Mm-hmm.
And we're excited to have all of these people on who are talking about saying no to things that they don't want and saying yes to the things that they do, because that's really what it boils down to. How do we know? How do we know? And and part of that is the I completely just lost what I was going to say. You saw it, like that was a visual thing. I swear I can see that coming out of my head.
Going back to the old ghost hunter shows, yeah, I saw that orb just flew right.
Yeah, just yep. Oh my gosh, ghost orbs all around. Whatever. Moving on, because I have no idea. So let me ask you this. We've talked about some of the challenges, some of the things that you've done, but what about learning self-advocacy? Learning this, especially healthy self-advocacy.
Yeah.
Not the I'm all alone, I have to pull myself up by the bootstraps and get this done, but actual real self-advocacy that's not bullshit. How did you learn how to do that?
Trial and error. Well, maybe it would be better to say not trial and error, but sitting on the ash heap or doing what I needed to do. Because I am very prone to sit on the ash heap, rend my garments, and cry, woe is me, because it feels. It feels. Now, it feels bad. At the same time, it feels good. Mm-hmm. But it produces nothing other than wet ashes. Now, getting out of the ash heap and actually going to people and saying, I need help, is alien. It's foreign. It is something that I don't do because I grew up in the bootstrap mentality. I grew up in the you don't bother other people with your burdens mentality. And essentially, when you're homeless, when you have no income whatsoever, and you need to eat, you need a roof over your head. Yeah, I could do it on my own. Me and my 3 dogs living in my Dodge Challenger is not ideal living. Yeah. So, the day that the day that I called my mother and I said, can I move home? Broke me.
Now, mind everybody, this is recently. This is in the very recent past.
This was last
10 years ago. Yeah.
This was in the month of September. I was looking at living in my car. I was looking at not having any resources whatsoever. And calling my mother and saying, can I move home? It broke me in ways that I did not expect. Because when you reach that point that you don't see any other options and you're willing to sacrifice yourself, because my mother has one caveat to me moving in with her, and that is that Genevieve Bergman does not exist. I'm not talking Genie V. I'm not talking the brand. Right. I'm talking Genevieve Bergman, the person that I have worked to become. I don't get to exist in my mother's house. But I also knew that I had no other visible options. And it was at that point that I realized that asking for help could have happened a long time before. Trying to find resources could have happened a long time before. When I was in my prior living situations, I didn't have any money for groceries. And my friend said, Genie, go apply for SNAP benefits. You qualify for them. You're homeless. You don't have a job. You qualify.
Right.
And I said, I don't know. I can't. I mean, I don't mean I can't go down there, in terms of I don't qualify or I don't know where I'm going. I meant I can't in terms of I've never done this before. I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
And she said, do you want me to go with you? And in that moment, it was like, no, I don't want you to go with me. I don't want you to see me at my weakest. I don't want you to see me at my fail points.
Yep.
And instead I said, thank you. And she went with me. She helped me speak the things that I needed to speak. I got the paperwork that I needed, and there was a lot of paperwork. And paperwork is one of my fail points. It's not an energy drain. It is a fail point. I will fill out 1 page of paperwork, and if I have 5 more pages of paperwork, I'm done.
Right.
So she sat with me, helped me answer the questions when I reached my fail points so that I could get that paperwork done and I could take it and turn it back in. Now, that doesn't on the outside sound like self-advocacy because I had a friend who is walking with me every step of the way. But that friend made it possible for me to go down to the county Health and Human Services Department, ask the right questions, make the right answers, get the information that I needed, fill in all of those questions, and take that back so that I had food to eat. That friend made it possible for me to ensure that I had food to eat. Not only did she go with me down there, she was like, I'm going to take you to the community-run food pantry, and I'm going to help you there too.
Yes. 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 Yes.
And that is going back to that whole thing about advocacy, in the work that we do. Sometimes being an advocate is not, getting in front of a legislative committee. Sometimes it is just going to the food pantry with somebody so that they can get the food they need to eat. That's an advocate.
Yes. And being that self-advocate was saying, thank you.
Yes.
And accepting the help that was being offered.
Yep.
And then being a self-advocate was utilizing the resources that were there available to you so that you could live.
Yeah.
And you could start digging yourself up along with this person who is standing there saying, take a break, let me have the shovel for 2 minutes.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of my latest victories, again, I am by definition homeless in that I do not provide my own living situation. I am living with friends who have provided me a space, but, I am only occupying just what they've allowed me to live. So I'm still in transition,
right,
to live in my own place. So being back in Oklahoma, I have not lived in Oklahoma in over 3 years, but being back in Oklahoma, I don't see me leaving the state anytime soon. So I needed to get my driver's license updated. So a few weeks ago, the governor of Oklahoma signed an executive order that mandated that the sex and the gender of people in the state of Oklahoma can only be that which they were born as. So yesterday I went in to the state's department so that I could update my driver's license. And I was terrified that I was going to be told, well, we can only do part of this, or we're only going to allow you to update parts of this. So I'm standing there and I present all of my documentation: my driver's license from Arkansas, my social security card, my proof of residence, my legal court-ordered name change. And they're like, this isn't enough, because we cannot update your gender marker. We cannot update the marker between M and F. Even though my driver's license has an F on it, even though my social security account has an F on it, they're like, we can't do this. Now, if you had a letter from a doctor saying that you had transitioned, and I pulled that document out, that I had my doctor write for me, that says Genevieve Bergman has fulfilled all of the medical criteria to transition to female. And I set that in front of her. And I said, that's my letter. So yesterday, in spite of my fear, in spite of my trepidation, in spite of the governor of Oklahoma, I went and I updated my documents in the state of Oklahoma so that I am now a legally documented female citizen of the state of Oklahoma. That's self-advocacy. And the power to do that, the power to go into a state agency in spite of an executive order by the governor of the state, in an environment where the entire country is torn between whether or not I'm a valid person, much less a citizen of this country. In spite of all of that, I went in and I said, this is who I am. Here is my proof. That is what I want to help other people do.
Yes.
That is what I want other people to be able to do, because they watch or they listen to NDNNO.
Yes. For those who are listening and not watching, I am like making tear marks on my face because I feel like my eyes are just full, because that's it. That's it exactly. So many pieces of what you just described to us is self-advocacy, right? Being able to access the doctor, right? Being able to get the documentation that you had. All of that stuff took folks in the community who knew how to do that, who had done some of those things before, and being able to ask questions and get the support to make that happen. I remember you going through the process to get all of these things done.
Yeah.
And some people think that self-advocacy means that you're out there and you're going through and you have to do all of that stuff alone.
Yeah.
We hope that with ND and NO, what people understand is that you don't have to do that alone. That's not what self-advocacy means. The capitalist version of self-advocacy, the one that people like to throw out in order to put the responsibility back onto the person who needs support, is not the self-advocacy that we are talking about.
Exactly.
We are talking about community care.
Yes.
We are talking about having a space to ask for the support that you need, to ask for the resources that you need, and then doing the hard ass work that has to be done to make sure that that access to those resources are there.
Yep.
And to create resources and to make access happen when it's not.
Exactly. There is no way I could sit here today and tell you about my legal documentation without the people who were a part of that along the way, including Tasha, who works in the state license and testing office here in Stillwater. She spent over an hour getting my documents lined up.
Yay, Tasha, shout out. Thank you, Tasha.
Yeah. Tasha was amazing. And what I mean, when we weren't trying to fight with what document needed to be done, how we were talking about, how she made supper, what she made for supper,
Right
and
on.
how she spends her lunchtime, because she gave up her lunch time
Wow.
to work with me.
Wow.
So me going in there was not just me saying I need to do this and her saying, well, I can't do this. It was a partnership. And not only did I self-advocate, she self-advocated, because now she reached out to her supervisor's supervisor to get instructions sent to all of the people who are helping with this.
Yes.
That's self-advocacy too.
This is.
Just because you get help for yourself doesn't mean you have to keep it for yourself.
Right.
You can share that with others,
Right.
because self-advocacy doesn't end with you getting what you want. Self-advocacy means also being in connection with other people who are going to follow in the footsteps that you have laid.
Abso-freaking-lutely. Because otherwise, you end up doing the work for other people.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Instead of what she did is she created a space where everybody had access to the information that they need to be able to do their work.
Yep.
To make it easier for them, which does turn around and make it easier for her. Because if she's the only one in that office who knows how to do that, oh, ouch, she's going to be giving up a lot of lunches.
So here's the thing. Okay, we're standing there in the office. She has gone through, she has been 58 minutes working on my documents. Another customer comes in, another person comes in to have their out-of-state driver's license updated. Another worker is working with this person. Now, this other person, cisgender female, from outward observation, the person working with them were like, wait a minute, how am I supposed to do this? Tasha, who I was working with, said, hey, I'm going to come over and I'm going to show you how to do this for this other person. Me going in to get my driver's license updated informed Tasha, who then informed another worker who assisted somebody who is not in the same situation as me.
Right.
If that's not community, I don't know what is.
That's fantastic. I
that woman does not know who I am. She does not know my name. I don't know her name. But because I made the effort to do the thing, this other person now was able to get their documents updated too.
Yeah.
That's community.
That is community. It really is. And that's what we're all about. And we are honored to have you as
I'm
part
looking
of the
forward to it.
community. Not just the ND community, not just the trans community, not just the autistic, ADHD, whatever, but the Umbrella US community too.
Yeah.
All of this together, we all work together.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited to see what happens with ND and NO over this awesome period of time. And so you and I are going to take the next 2 months.
Yeah.
We're going to take November and December, and we are not going to create any podcasts. But starting in January, we will be back. We are going to utilize the time in November and December to make sure that we have everything ready in the way that that it needs to be done to appropriately support the community and have on people who want to participate. I am going to encourage everybody to go to our website if you would like to participate in these things. So I'm going to drop this in chat here. I'm going to say it out loud too. umbrellaus.org/ take -action. You go to that. You will, there's a box there. There are lots of different ways you can take action. You can donate. I mean, we love donations. Yes, we do. But there's a lot of different ways that you can take action there. One of them says share your experience, and you can apply on there if you would like to maybe come on as a guest to ND and NO or one of our other podcasts, or maybe you have a webinar idea or a course or something and you want to present something, or maybe you want to be a writer or something like that in our self-advocacy survival guide. So many opportunities, but you can do that under the share your experience, and check out the other ways that you can work with Umbrella as well and be part of the team like Genie.
Yee.
Yee. Okay, last question is, what tip do you have for someone who might be in a similar, have similar challenges, or what tips for those NDs out there?
Honesty is the biggest tip that I think that not enough people we're not honest with ourselves about who we are, about what we can do, what we cannot do. I don't think we're honest about what it means to be authentic. I don't think we're honest about, the resources that are available to us. One of the things that I had to do was get honest with myself and say, you can try and do this on your own. You can try, and you're going to sit there on that ash heap and you're going to continue to cry about it and you're going to get covered in muddy ashes. But being honest, I realized that I have friends, I have supporters, I have people who are looking up to me. It's easier for me to say, I don't matter. I don't have anything to say. But if I'm honest, people look to me and they're like, we trust you. For whatever reason, we trust you. So be honest. Be honest about yourself, with yourself. Accept when other people are honest with you. Because if you are your own worst critic, you are lying to yourself too damn much.
We practice this together.
Yeah. So be honest.
Yeah.
And by being honest, you begin to understand that what you need is not a burden when there are other people who want to be there with you.
Love it. Awesome. Gorgeous.
Thank you.
So we will be back.
Yeah.
The 4th Thursday of January at this time. This is going to be our normal time. We will be back the 4th Thursday of January. Subscribe on YouTube because you'll get updates there. Subscribe on LinkedIn. If you're watching from LinkedIn, make sure that you're on our page. Also, we have our events page on umbrellaus.org/events. And you can subscribe to the calendar, which will let you know when we have these events as well. We are excited that you are here with us. Genie, thank you so much. I cannot even express how excited I am that you are going to be hosting this. And I cannot wait to see the people who you have.
Thank you. I'm energized and excited. So thank you for this opportunity. And I can't wait to work together.
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
Yep.
Okay, thanks everybody. We will see you later. Mwah.
Mwah.